Hello Jungkook fans, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a side of Jungkook that feels deeper, quieter, and more powerful than ever. These aren't just words from an "Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel." Today, we're talking about something that many people notice, but few are willing to say out loud. Jungkook is praised around the world for his talent, his dedication, and his impact, yet somehow, he's also the one who is always expected to carry more, speak more, and represent more than any other idol. Why does the pressure always fall on him? Why are the expectations so different when it comes to Jungkook? Tonight, we're breaking down the quiet double standards, the unseen pressure, and the questions that keep following his name. For years now, there has been an unspoken rule in the idol industry, an expectation that quietly follows only certain names. And Jungkook is one of them. No matter what he does, no matter how carefully he moves, the public always seems to want more statements, more responsibility, more courage, more answers. It's as if simply being an artist is never enough when your name is Jungkook. What makes this situation even more uncomfortable is not the criticism itself, but the imbalance behind it. When controversies rise, when social or political pressure builds, Jungkook's name is often the first to be dragged into the conversation. People ask why he stays silent, why he doesn't lead, why he doesn't use his influence the way they imagine he should. The weight of expectation grows heavier every single time, and yet, the same questions are rarely asked of others. Look closely and a pattern begins to emerge. Other idols are allowed to exist quietly within their roles. They can focus on music, performances, and their own personal growth without being forced into the position of spokesperson for an entire generation. But Jungkook, he is constantly framed as someone who owes the public more than his art, as if fame automatically turns him into a leader, an activist, or a symbol that must speak on command. This double standard doesn't come from concern, it comes from projection. People project their own frustrations, hopes, and political desires onto Jungkook, expecting him to carry them effortlessly. And when he doesn't move the way they want, the disappointment quickly turns into criticism, harsh words, unfair comparisons, endless pressure, all directed at one individual who never asked to be placed on that pedestal. What's rarely discussed is how selective this outrage really is. When other idols remain silent, it's called professionalism. When they avoid controversy, it's called being careful. But when Jungkook does the same, it suddenly becomes a problem. Suddenly, silence is labeled as weakness, or worse, indifference. The rules change depending on who the idol is, and Jungkook seems to be playing a game where the rules are always stacked against him. And here's the uncomfortable truth: demanding more from one idol while protecting others isn't justice. It's favoritism disguised as morality. It's easy to call for accountability when it's someone you don't stand, much harder when it's your favorite. That's where the double standard reveals itself quietly, but clearly. Jungkook has never positioned himself as a political leader. He has never claimed to speak for millions. What he has done consistently is dedicate his life to his craft, to his fans, and to growing as an artist. And yet, that dedication is often overlooked in favor of expectations he never agreed to carry. At some point, the question needs to shift. Not why isn't Jungkook doing more, but why are we asking so much from only him? Why is one idol expected to represent courage, change, and leadership while others are allowed to simply exist without judgment? There is also something deeply human that often gets ignored in these conversations. Jungkook is not a concept, not a movement, not a tool for public validation. He is a person, one who grew up under constant surveillance, whose every expression has been analyzed since his teenage years. Expecting him to flawlessly balance fame, personal boundaries, and public demands is not strength, it's an impossible standard. What many people forget is that silence does not always mean avoidance. Sometimes it means self-preservation. Sometimes it means understanding the weight of words in a world where one sentence can be twisted, misinterpreted, or weaponized. Jungkook has seen this happen repeatedly, not only to himself, but to countless others in the industry. Choosing caution in that environment is not cowardice, it's awareness. There's also a quiet irony here. Those who demand Jungkook to lead often ignore how leadership is forced onto him without consent. True leadership is chosen, not imposed. And yet, the narrative keeps pushing him into roles he never claimed while absolving others from the same expectations. That imbalance speaks louder than any statement ever could. The pressure doesn't just come from critics, it also comes from the public's obsession with symbolism. Jungkook is treated as a mirror for societal frustrations. When people feel unheard, they look for a famous voice to speak for them. When systems feel broken, they look for a young icon to challenge them. And when that icon doesn't comply, frustration turns into blame. But no idol should have to sacrifice their peace just to satisfy a public demand that shifts every year. Jungkook's journey has always been about growth, artistry, and connection through music. Redefining that journey to fit someone else's agenda erases the very humanity fans claim to protect. There's another layer to this conversation that rarely gets addressed: the way public expectations quietly erase boundaries. Jungkook's fame has grown so large that many people forget boundaries still exist: emotional, mental, and personal ones. When someone becomes globally loved, the line between admiration and entitlement often disappears, and that's when pressure turns dangerous. Being constantly watched doesn't just affect what an idol says, it shapes how they think, how they hesitate, how they protect themselves. Jungkook has learned, over time, that every action can be magnified beyond intention. A simple gesture can become a headline, a quiet moment can be interpreted as a statement. Living under that microscope changes everything, especially when silence itself is no longer allowed. What's troubling is how quickly empathy vanishes once expectations aren't met. The same audience that praises Jungkook's sincerity also questions his character the moment he refuses to perform a role he never signed up for. Support becomes conditional, respect becomes transactional. And that contradiction sits at the core of this entire issue. It's also worth noticing how narratives are selectively built. When idols are praised for staying in their lane, it's framed as maturity. When Jungkook does the same, it's framed as avoidance. These narratives don't appear by accident, they're shaped by bias, by fandom wars, by the need to protect some while scrutinizing others. Over time, this creates a distorted image of responsibility. One idol becomes the emotional outlet for public disappointment, while others remain untouched. Jungkook doesn't just carry his own career, he's made to carry conversations that should never rest on one person alone. That weight is invisible, until it breaks something quietly inside. And perhaps the most telling detail of all, Jungkook continues to move forward anyway. He creates, he performs, he connects through music rather than speeches. In a world that demands constant explanation, he chooses expression, and that choice, in itself, becomes misunderstood. What often goes unnoticed is how normalizing this pressure slowly reshapes the industry itself. When one idol is repeatedly singled out, it sends a message that some artists are expected to carry more emotional labor than others. That imbalance doesn't disappear, it grows quietly until it becomes a standard no one questions anymore. And in that silence, fairness is lost, not loudly, but gradually, piece by piece. At the center of all this noise is a simple reality: Jungkook is allowed to exist without fulfilling